Good morning.
Morning.
Oh,
I'll do that. Well, he's afraid to.
Oh, I meant to go back and put the link for CPM in here, but it's in the Friday packet.
To do that. Yeah.
Okay, we ready? Okay. All right, so a couple of things on here that I just wanted to review with you, and then Cheryl's got a couple things, and Chris has the teaching and learning plan. Just real quick to recap, we did our last professional development was on Monday, the 3rd, I think. Thank you. It went really well. It was a great day. So we did, with the teachers in the morning, we had some different sessions that they attended, things that we followed up on, collected some qualitative data from them on the MTSS process, on some of the personalized learning stuff we did. Mallory also ran all by herself. At the same time, PD for our classified staff over at Riverview, which was really cool. So everybody in the district was getting professional development on that day. And then we brought them all together. Just like we started the year, we thought it would be nice to end the year. So we brought them back kind of for a state of the schools at 1 o'clock. Chris addressed all of them, talked to them about what's going on, direction we're going, kind of recapping. And then we took them out to the field house and did a little celebration, which was also, I thought, very cool to have them all together. And Mallory and I had done photo boards. There were 50 of them, or close to 50 of them, of all different things that have gone on over the course of the year. So we had a picture and a blurb about what happened. We did retirements. We did they're all going up tomorrow.
Oh, I was going to
Yes,
ask.
yeah. So the student council was super excited. As soon as Stacy and Jamie walked in, they're like, what are you doing? And we had them all lined up around the field house. We took them out there. So they were all hanging so that they could just walk around, and we had cake and popcorn, and they just a nice end to the PD. So it was, or to the year of professional development. So yeah, all the boards will be up tomorrow so people can see, in addition to celebrating 75 years of Riverside, they'll also be able to see what we're doing now, which is really cool. Yeah, so it was very fun. It was a lot of work. This room looks like a scrapbook party had gone on for 3 days while Mallory and I were furiously trying to put the boards together. We had kids come down and help us, but overall, I think it was a really good way to end professional development. So it was just fun.
And then the qualitative data that you collected, is that something you're in the process of going through?
Yes, so we'll what I'll probably do is put it in ChatGPT, have it all summarized so that we can talk about it as administrators, and a core team. I'll talk with the coaches and let it guide us for next year what we're doing.
Okay.
What our areas of strengths and weaknesses are.
Yeah. And then the purchase of the reading program that went through, and do you think you'll have the materials before teaching?
We absolutely will. We're right now working. So they had sent, and that was a good thing. I did put that on here. That's a good question. So we did our first round of training, actually. So the 3 through 6 language arts teachers did not participate in the morning stuff. They were here, and we made sure everybody was here in the afternoon, but they did 4 hours of training to start with Benchmark Advance.
Okay.
We had them over at Parkside. So they got an intro. We didn't have the materials because they couldn't send teacher stuff separate, but they had training stuff.
Okay.
So they were able to go through that training stuff. And yes, we're going back and forth right now with the rep. And I needed to talk to Rich about where he wanted everything delivered, because I have some concerns about dropping pallets at places we may be moving classrooms, you know what I mean? So we're trying to figure that out, but absolutely it'll be here before the end of the year.
Okay.
Fine.
Great.
That was a good question. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's all right. I was just following up because I know we,
Yep.
you know,
It's
Paid
rolling.
for it.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's rolling, and it will for sure be in their hands.
Okay.
In fact, we're talking about maybe doing some small group stuff if we can before the end of the year with them. Clearly, we won't have them all together at the same time, but pulling a couple of them at a time and just making sure they're ready to work through the summer.
okay,
And then we'll follow back up in August. They'll get more training.
good.
So math curriculum. We are proposing a new math curriculum eventually it will be for our 6th through Algebra 2 students. Right now, next year, we would like to implement 6 through 8. So we're gonna start with middle school. We've already talked to the middle school teachers. The program is called CPM, which stands for College Preparatory Math, but that doesn't really.
What was the first?
College Preparatory
College.
Math, but that doesn't matter because nobody knows it by that. It's just CPM. I actually had to look it up. I was like, I don't even know what that stands for.
Mhm.
It is, so I feel like right now, and we've talked a little bit about this, Chris and Mike Hall and I went over and we talked to it. We had all of the 6th through 8th grade teachers together. I feel like we're a little bit in math where we were when, at the whole language period. I don't know if you guys remember that. So years ago for reading, everybody was gonna learn reading by, you know what I mean, like just, we were gonna read to you, and you were gonna learn, you were gonna learn to read and love reading. Okay, well, that's not a good way to do things, you know what I mean? And then, but now, in education, as we always do, the pendulum has swung this way, and it's the science of reading, and it's scripted, and, you know what I mean? And so, we're looking to find a way to meet in the middle, and that's what we've done in reading. We have the science of reading, we never gave up phonics, let's find a way to bring in some more of that love of reading. We kind of feel like we're looking at math the same way. You drill and kill is not the way, you know what I mean? It can't be all that. We have to get kids thinking deeper about math and talking about math and understanding the concepts more, but we also can't have them just discover math. Sometimes you have to sit down and I gotta teach you the Pythagorean theorem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So CPM seems to be a curriculum that brings those two things together. A lot more collaboration, a lot more students discussing math, looking at math more deeply, understanding those concepts. So that is what we would like to do. I have a link in the Friday packet for the whole board.
Okay.
That'll go out today. That'll take you right to the curriculum so you can take a look at it. It was developed by teachers, which is interesting. It's a nonprofit organization. It is not a textbook company. But schools like Solon and Aurora,
Okay.
West G.
No, that was my
West G.
next question.
Yep, Solon, Aurora, West G, schools like that are using the program. It's a different way of teaching, and it's gonna take a lot of support, which is why we're just doing the middle school next year, and then we will look to scale it up to the high school. the following
We're doing the middle school and Algebra 1, because it's in 8th grade. Honors Algebra 1.
Well, we gotta talk about it a little bit, because some of those teachers that teach two different, like, they teach 8th grade and they teach just regular Algebra 1, they're like, can we just go in
Yeah,
on
they-
Algebra 1?
There are
So,
some who are excited about pilot some stuff.
yeah,
Mhm. Right.
so,
So
Okay.
is the cost of this curriculum in your forecast already or no?
Sorry, what was it? I'm sorry.
money guy.
Is the cost of the curriculum already in the 5-year forecast or no?
It is, some of it is because there's some reduction in some of the costs. I don't have the quote yet to really analyze it, but.
So I will
know,
tell you, I do have the quote is about 100,000 roughly for 6 through 8. But we also would typically be paying our yearly subscription for Sabbaths, which is our current program. So it will replace some of that. It won't be a brand new cost, if that makes sense.
The other,
The whole,
Yep.
the whole amount.
Right.
The other difference is, although Savvis is typically it's an online subscription, this is one of the things I really like about it is it comes with a mathematician's workbook, which is a consumable.
Good.
So kids will be writing math down in
Mhm.
books, and that will also be a fees, so that'll come from the fees line as well. So it's a little bit of a different approach to not just online. It's gonna get kids back into writing and bringing a notebook, but it provides that to them where they have a disposable notebook as well.
So you're anticipating it being somewhat of a wash?
It might be a little bit of an increase, but the initial setup is for things like the algebra tiles and some of the manipulatives, which is easy for you to say. Those will be the one-time cost, but the rest of it will be a kind of an annual consumable.
Yeah. And So typically, and I know it's a new program, and you want to get it in the hands of teachers before they leave, so if they digest it over the summer. Consumables generally fall under general fund.
Yeah, we run everything through the general fund.
Yeah, so will that be split out that way?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And they will also, we want to get them into their hands now, they've asked for that, and it comes with training as well, and that
Okay.
training is both over the summer training, which we would absolutely have to pay teachers to attend, but then it also is, when they are running the lessons, CPM sends in-class trainers out to go into the classrooms to monitor and to give coaching points.
Okay, so what works best, right after school or before school?
They've-
Certainly not
yeah.
smack in the middle of the summer.
No, they've
Yeah.
requested, actually, what I would like to do is do one day before the end of the year, so they're prepped to correctly look at the materials
Okay.
over the summer. Hit them one day in August before we start, you know what I mean, on those couple of days that we have professional development at the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Do one day then, and then space out the other 2 days, because I think we get 4 days of professional development, and then space the other 2 out throughout the year, so we're kind of catching them that way. So that's the
Okay.
plan. Definitely to get something before the end of the year, so while they're using the materials over the summer,
Right.
they're looking at them how they should be.
Okay, so PD falls under general fund, correct?
If I do it before the end of the year, we won't have to pay them, and that's kind of what I'm thinking. If
Oh,
I can-
okay,
you know
so
what I mean?
they
If I
throw
can get
that
it-
in, but then,
PD's under, depending on what it could be federal programs, Title II.
oh, okay, okay. And we always know some
And
of
we
our
would pay
federal
subs.
programs, as you said.
Well, I
When
wouldn't
I
say
ask
we
about the
always-
reds, you say, well, it's when they pay.
It's on a reimbursement basis, so you always see
Yeah,
it.
reimbursement.
You see it right at the end of the month, and then it gets reimbursed the following month, within a couple of days.
Mhm.
And we are assuming no changes to Title II, but that's a big assumption.
Okay, okay, yeah, no one knows. It's a
Correct.
crystal ball. Okay,
The other thing that's nice about CPM is it does come with a parent guide that we will
Oh,
post to
that'll
the
be good.
website. Because I have learned as a parent, the hardest part about any of these math is kind of helping your kid learn the way that,
Mhm.
you know, not just take a picture, go to ChatGPT or all that, kind of figure it out the way we learned it. So it does provide some parent guide as well to help parents navigate some of this as well.
that's good.
So
Yeah, it seems like, generally parents are okay to a certain grade level, usually at the elementary, and then when you get a little higher than that, it's like, they want,
Mhm.
they're frustrated trying to help.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's.
And then
it's like-
sometimes the
yeah.
kids don't want to ask, or they,
Yeah, and it's like any skill, you
Mhm.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you don't do algebra in your daily life, you
Yeah.
don't remember how to do algebra, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it's not surprising that parents
Mhm.
don't know that, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Now, if I sat down with a book, maybe I could refresh my memory, but
right. So you said West G, Solon, and there was one other,
Aurora.
Aurora.
And we already have, some of our teachers already have contacts in those districts and have
Okay.
been reaching out and, you know what I mean, just talking about it, so it's going to be a change and not all of them are happy about it, but we think this is the best direction. for
Well,
us at
and
this point.
sometimes if another district's been doing it, it's nice to know where are the bumps.
Yep.
How do we get through this? And-
Yep. And no program hits every kid, do you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
we know that, so,
Yeah.
there's gonna be places we're gonna have to plug some holes and do some interventions, but there also are gonna be kids, I think, that excel in this environment, and we do believe they're gonna have a deeper understanding of math.
So embedded in the program, do they have, it differentiated enough to break it down or to enrich students to go beyond, or do we not know that yet?
They
Because
have-
usually they offer something.
They have some, they do. It's a lot of group-based thinking
Mhm.
and group-based math. And so when we brought the middle school teachers together, Mr. Hall, who's been through
Mhm.
2 adoptions of this in 2 different districts,
Oh, okay,
brought
good.
brought the teachers together and did a sample lesson with them. And watching math teachers with the sample lesson work together, they could see it, how it would benefit all students, because you can see it's very, there's some hands-on to it before they teach the algorithm, all of that, and it really kind of got to, different ways of tracking data, and then talking about their thoughts behind it, and really watching the math teachers who knew the answer, but how they got the answer was a really unique experience, and something that kept them to think, okay, I can see how this works, and I think it kind of turns some heads back out of the program where, yes, it's not how I typically teach, but it makes it a little bit different. I can see how this impacts all kids.
Yeah, and it used to be that in some of the testing that we do, you have to explain your answer sometimes in a narrative. And it's just not a simple calculation.
And, yeah, and it also allows them to attack problems in different ways, which is part of the,
Right,
if we teach kids, Savas teaches kids a problem and how to do that one problem. It gives them kind of the same problem with a little different tweak to it, but it's not necessarily a application of math. This is more of the application of math concepts, and so
Okay.
it allows them the tools and the skills to attack problems in different ways.
okay. So I think you said that there was still some Savas math that'll be taught.
There will be, so Algebra 1, potentially Geometry and Algebra 2. So our high school level courses are gonna stay that for another year.
For one more.
So we will renew that just for 1 year, and we will switch, and then we will roll the
Right.
CPM up through Algebra 2.
Okay, all right.
As we've seen with kids, they're gonna want it because they like it.
Well, and it allows a child who
Some of them
started it
do.
to
Some of
continue.
them aren't gonna like it, because some of, especially our higher level kids, like that. Let me sit down, you tell me what, because they play school really well.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't want to manipulate all this stuff. I just want you to tell me what I have to know. I can memorize it and I can regurgitate it. So this really, like, I keep saying that deeper thinking, but you have to understand it. You can't just regurgitate. And that's what we want for math now. It's just we want them to have a better understanding.
Yeah, okay,
Okay?
all right.
I'm
Sounds
gonna
good.
skip this for a minute and let Cheryl do the
Yeah.
two, because I think yours are fairly quick.
Yeah, they
So
are.
we're gonna do the school psychologist and the special ed profile. Cheryl wants to give an update on that.
So I just wanted to mention that we've been contacted by a school psychologist intern candidate to be considered for an internship site this coming school year, so 25-26. The student is from the University of Findlay, and I do have a phone conference scheduled with the associate professor of the program next Wednesday to get more information. I wanted to bring it up and just mention it today, though, because most interns are pretty much finalizing their intern site, so I don't know that we might not agree to do this before we meet again. So I don't have all the information. It is a state, I don't know what they call it. I don't think it's stipend is the right word, but it is funded by the state in terms of a salary that they provide the school district to place this candidate and serve as an internship site. The actual amount and the financial aspect of it, that's what I still need to find out.
Okay, is that similar to what the principal thing?
No, it's completely different. A
It's
while
totally
ago,
different.
one of the governor's wife was a school psychologist and somehow wrote into the budget that we would pay psychologist interns a stipend.
Okay,
Or not even a stipend, it's a pretty decent
It's
salary.
a salary.
Yeah,
I will
it's a
tell you, it was a
salary
very
and
long
someone
time
pays
ago
for it. It
because
was.
I was a paid, my internship was paid.
But that's-
Now, I
It was
think
like 110
in
years ago, then.
94, 95, thank you very much.
Oh, it seems like 100 years ago.
Some people weren't born on that.
That was 1994.
But yeah, that's.
That's a
it's-
different
it's-
program.
No, this is a new program which looks completely different.
okay,
If it goes through.
yeah, all right. So you're going to check it all out and would she?
I already met, I did a Zoom meeting with the candidate, and I included one of our current school psychologists. That went very well, so
Okay.
it's a matter of kind of now finalizing the details and
Okay.
seeing if we're a good fit for what she's looking for,
Right.
as well as the financial aspect of it.
Okay, so the newest site that we just hired, where is she placed or
I
is?
haven't
You
made
haven't
those
worked
decisions
out
yet, but
coverage.
she is, well, she was on the last board agenda, I believe, and she will start in August.
Okay, and so this one would work alongside someone?
Right, she would need a school psych
Like a
supervisor, which I have our school psychologist over at the middle school, Jenna Biga, is willing to be her supervisor.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, and she was the one who sat in on the phone conversation with me when we met the candidate.
Okay, and I don't know if the program requires sometimes that they have experience at different levels, or whether they can just stay at one level, like high school versus elementary, or or does that even matter?
So the internship does require experience across all levels, as well as preschool,
Mhm.
because obviously a school psychologist can be pre-K 12 plus.
Mhm.
So we will work with her to get her, I mean, while the middle schools, our middle school psychologist will be the primary supervisor, we will work to get her exposure to other grade levels as
Okay.
well as preschool for, in her best interest, so.
Right, okay, that sounds
Okay.
great. Yeah, and because she would be hired by the district, I mean, like school psychs, I mean, you really fall under confidentiality and all those.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm, absolutely.
Yeah, that's interesting, because we were worried whether we'd find one, and now we have possibility.
Well, so I
She's
have
a
reached
one.
out to other universities to inquire about being an internship site because we did have the interest. I really think this is a great opportunity,
Mhm.
I'll tell you, and you learn most everything on your actual internship.
Mhm.
I mean, you can only have so much book knowledge, but it's actually getting out there and doing and working with, teams and
Mhm.
the district at the district level. So,
Okay.
but because we're so far northeast,
Mhm.
like Kent has a really good program, but a lot of candidates don't want to come this far east. And then John Carroll did away with their program, I think, a couple years ago.
Wow.
So it used to be Cleveland State, John Carroll, and Kent. And then Cleveland State, and I think I mentioned this when we were looking to hire, they were only total, out of those universities, 12 intern candidates.
Mhm.
And there's usually more, there's usually up in the 20s.
Mhm.
So there's less individuals going into the field, and then the closing of the John Carroll program didn't help.
Mhm.
So if this works out, I'm excited about it if we can get this to work out. So.
Okay.
And then the only other thing I wanted to mention, and I can't remember if I mentioned our special ed profile, we received back on January 24th. I don't remember if I mentioned it at another meeting, but we did have an indicator, graduation, that measures students with IEPs who are graduating and whether or not they're graduating with a regular diploma. And we did not meet that indicator. The target was 66.61%, and we fell at 59.52%. So we weren't hugely discrepant, but still didn't meet the target. And so it looks at the number of kids that dropped out. It looks at the number of kids graduating with a regular diploma, and then students graduating with what they call a certificate. Those would be students who either are taking the alternate assessment or are exempted by the IEP team. So because of that, we do have to do a corrective action plan, and I just wanted to mention that we do have a team working on that. You have to do a root analysis as well as a corrective action plan, and that's due April 4th. So I'm working with Melissa and our high school team to complete those documents, and those will be uploaded, and we'll meet the deadline for that.
Okay. So, I mean, in order to earn the degree, it's based on what their IEP goals are and what they achieve?
No, it's based on receiving a regular diploma. So
Yeah,
they
but
have
I
to
mean,
have
how
the
do
same
they
pathway.
earn that?
The same pathway that they have to earn it in the same manner, like they have to earn a regular diploma in the same manner as students without disabilities. What's helped us is the alternate pathways that we have.
Okay.
And that, getting into it because we haven't really met yet, but my theory or assumption is at this point that we've been exempting too many students without following an alternate pathway, or at least prepping them for an alternate pathway if they can't pass either, the state tests or earn a regular diploma in the same.
It's really just the state test piece.
Yeah, pretty much.
So we would exempt a student on an IEP if they had significant disabilities in either math or reading, you know what I mean, because they
Right.
couldn't pass that. So there's 3 buckets for graduation. There's credits, there's competency, and there's the SEALs, the readiness piece. The competency piece is test scores, and because they have a disability in that particular area, whether it be math or reading, we would exempt them, and we just wouldn't hit that middle bucket at all. We need, and they can do it. We need to find an alternate way for them to hit that competency bucket. So we already have a plan, I mean,
We're-
we're already starting to correct it, so.
And we were actually
Wait.
starting down that path even before we got the
to-
results.
To speak up here, we're not doing anything wrong.
No.
Our students
No.
our
Yeah.
students have graduated with Ohio diplomas.
Yeah.
They are valid Ohio diplomas. We are following state law under what the law allows. The issue that came up with this and where they provide us a ding is federal graduation rate is different than state graduation rate. And this is, they looked at, because it's IDEA and federal funds, they looked at federal graduation rate and said, in this case, and it was a nuanced, kind of hidden thing that
We
was
didn't
thrown,
know,
that
yeah.
was thrown way back, and kind of, they kept saying, at some point, this is going to come and impact you. And
Yes.
this is the year that it came and said, and impacted us. Our kids graduated with confidence, they graduated ready, and all of that. It's a nuanced item
Right.
that is really just a matter of checking off boxes and paperwork. And that's what we're getting through, and it's a, like another mandate that comes through, it's just not,
It's actually indicator 1 on our profile, and interestingly enough, we met indicator 2, which is dropout. So it's just a matter of getting more students to graduate with a regular diploma and not necessarily.
with an Ohio, with a
Right.
federal diploma that any other student needs.
Right.
And that's the difference, is because they were exempted, and we'll still have some students who don't meet those
We will.
requirements, because if they require the alternate assessment,
Right.
that does not count for a federal
Yeah.
graduation
Right.
student. But we're gonna be fine.
Okay, that's fine. All right, well, thank you.
You're up.
Okay. So, one of the things that the board has asked that I prepare and work with, and I'm really excited to, unveil this, is a teaching and learning plan, and kind of pulling all the things together to show what we are doing to continue to meet our mission, which is educating excellence, along the way. And the way that we developed it is really for an online platform. So this is printouts of what is going to be placed on our website, and very visible for everyone to see. We want to be transparent about all the things that we do. But really kind of tying everything together. So this is how, starting with the upper right-hand corner, anything we do in education starts with high-quality assessments, knowing where students are, knowing what they bring to the table, how we get them. So we listed a list of high-quality assessments, and we're still building that out. All of the highlighted topics are hyperlinked. Some of them I've included. Some of them, in the case of the high-quality assessments, we're finishing those out. That will be hyperlinked before we post it to the web. But it also kind of gives when we give the assessment, what assessment it is and what it's used for. Whether it's used for diagnostics, whether it's used for achievement results, whether it's used for identification of gifted. In some cases, like MAP and all, it's used for more than one thing. So all of those, like DIBEL is used for progress monitoring, depending. So not every student's going to take all of these assessments, but that's kind of where we start from. And then we use that to kind of drive our instruction, and our instruction is based on this Riverside Way instructional framework. We've shared this before and talked about it, but really putting that's the key in the core. Towards that. The framework was developed by our teachers. We asked them, what does a good classroom look like? And they came up with a lot of ideas as to what they are. And then we took those and we aligned them with the personalized learning framework, because that's something we know. We need to meet every student where they are and kind of push them forward. And so we put that together, and there's a document that's in there, and that's this next pages, but that'll link to the framework of what to expect in every single classroom. And then also what a Riverside teacher prepares for every single lesson, and not necessarily you're gonna see it every time you're in classroom, but what the expectations are, what students are doing, what it looks like, what it sounds like. You'll notice it's like students are engaged, teacher is facilitating, not teachers at the front of the room, just prevailing knowledge. And so it's that, and then we align it with those principles of personalized learning, because we are making that push, and you hear a lot of personalized learning, and it's not a shift. And we want to share this to all stakeholders, that the things we are doing all kind of make sense, and they come and they focus on this document. And moving forward, everything we do from a professional development standpoint and everything else is going to have it will play into this. So this is really where we're pushing forward. Rigorous curriculum. Right now it links to our website with the board adopted curriculum that are approved on there. It also goes, we'll also have other kind of concepts along the way as to what we look for in a curriculum piece. All the things all the things we are going to share along the way. So that will be up there as we continue to adopt it. As we just talked about math, the math curriculum that is adopted needs to shift a little bit because we're just adopting a new curriculum 6th through 8. So we need to adjust that in the writing as well. So that'll lag a little behind. But we'll also have links to the CPM site and the parent guides and all that along the way too with that curriculum. So that's the part of it. Then you get to MTSS, and there's an infographic about what MTSS is, because we use a lot of acronyms in education. So we put together an infographic, which you link to it, and that's kind of right here, but it takes them through as to what to expect and what we do for the different tiers of instruction and behavior graphics. So really kind of what it means, why we do it, kind of the real-time data that we use when we're talking about tier 2 versus tier 3 instruction, what all of that means. And there are links in here as well. This also links back to tier 1 and the rigorous curriculum. So tier 1 instruction is the rigorous curriculum in the Riverside, the Riverside instructional framework. So kind of tying it all back, and a lot of these will take you back to the same spots as we continue to add links in throughout this, because it all does, kind of interweave, which is why we chose the circle as the path, because it is kind of a circle to work your way through. Instructional rounds is a practice that came out of DLT, and that's something that we are really working forward to. Right now we have our internal instructional rounds document linked to it. That's our look-fors, and for our practitioners, our teachers who go into classrooms, what they're to look for, the paperwork and all that. We are going to add a pretty page that kind of explains what instructional rounds are.
Yeah.
I told him we had to nice it up. I was like, we need a one-pager, this is too many words.
We have a kind of a handbook as to you're going on rounds. So when we do rounds, we bring a bunch of teachers into the room. We give them this guide, this document, and say, give them about 10 minutes to read through it, what to expect, and then all of a sudden you take 5, 6, 8 teachers, and they go into different classrooms all at one time. So for students, it's also, I'm sitting in here, when you go home, and you tell mom and dad, hey, there were 8 teachers who walked into my classroom today for about 5 minutes, and they walked out. They asked me what I was doing. They said, hey, what are you learning? And then they walked out.
Right.
Well, to explain what that is, instructional rounds will have a kind of one-pager to explain. What happens when your kid comes up and says, all of a sudden, 8 teachers or 8 staff members walked in, what does that mean? Well, they're doing rounds, and it comes from a medical field,
Oh, yeah.
but really is a way of practitioners, taking data and sharpening practitioners. And what they're looking for in those rounds is they're looking for evidence of the Riverside Way instructional framework. So they have specific things that they're looking for. They check it out. We collect the data, and then as a team, we go back from that data and say, well, here's a problem of practice. We're not necessarily seeing that our students are actually actively engaged. They're more passively engaged in this. One of the things that came out of Lamouth when they did their rounds is they noticed an over-reliance on technology. Kids were on the Chromebook what they felt to be a little too much, because they went from one app to the next to the next. So it really became an idea of how do we bring back paper and pencil to some aspect, which drove a lot of the discussion with CPM and the math workbook and all that, getting them off the computer a little bit to think and to write things down. So we've already taken some of this data to adjust what we're doing, but continue to look back, and it's our teachers who are doing it, and providing themselves feedback, which really comes back from a coaching model and not just an idea of, okay, I am the evaluator, I'm going to do this once, twice, 4 times a year, but this is more of a routine purpose. One of the things that we linked in here too is the portrait of Riverside Beaver. It's important that we teach content and specific standards, but we also teach these habits and traits. So that's a part of every single lesson and where that is. And also those we will link into once we get them to design the look-fors for the different grade levels. We'll tailor the grade levels, but the look-fors that were developed out of our business advisory and DLT. Kind of a checkpoint in the talk with about students, and to have those conversations and conferences with kids. Hey, right, I think your strengths really are being a leader, and I think your strengths are communication, but I think some areas for growth this year might be working a little bit on lifelong learner. It seems like you just stop here. What really interests you? Kind of sparking what that looks like and what those look for are. So I think those are good conversations to have all the way through and kind of continue to develop those. Those are not going to truly be like a grade card point, but they're going to be kind of discussion points and more in conferences. So that's something we're developing as to how we use those checkpoints next year. The next step, obviously the goal of everything when we get through is college and career readiness, what that means. So this is an infographic really as to what college and career readiness means right now, what it means at Riverside. And it's not just about can you get into college, it's about do you have the skills and all the things we've designed for that. So we linked the career electives. There's a one-page kind of what is college and career readiness. So we have career electives, the new capstone project that's coming for next year in a pilot phase, our AP courses, that true rigorous curriculum. Another thing we're really excited to roll out is Lakeland at RHS. Next year we will offer, I think, 31 credit hours at Riverside in person with a partnership with Lakeland. So we're bringing a number of classes on board, assuming that they all run with enrollment. But we're doing a big push out for that. Obviously traditional CCP, that we have to have that option as well, and then Auburn. So really and truly our students who are leaving here having those experiences so that when they graduate, they're college and career ready. And then the last part obviously is student achievement. And all of this is to increase student achievement and what we measure for that. And student achievement obviously is the scores on the report card, which will increase if we're doing all the other things on the wheel. Those scores are going to go up. But also we're going to look at things like stakeholder surveys. We're going to start asking parents and students and staff, some stakeholder surveys. And the goal for this is to build out a dashboard. That's in progress. So we want to have a monitor of where we're at. The state does a nice job with the one-time snapshot and their dashboard that are out there. But we want to, what the goal really is moving forward is to not be surprised and not hope. We should know kind of where we're at going into this is to say, hey, within, plus or minus 5, we should know about where we are with a lot of these things. And I think that's a fair estimate to where our students are. We're getting to that point, but we're not quite there yet. So we're going to build that dashboard out to kind of say this is where we're at moving forward. So we can even correct the corrective action along the way. We've done a lot of that this year with our looking at metrics and kind of taking a look at diagnostic assessments, asking teachers to look at what your students missed. Does it pair with last year's and previous years? How are you teaching that and what changes are you going to make? We've had teachers kind of say, well, I know I already taught that question. I can't believe most of my kids missed it. I'm mad at them. And I'm going to go back and we're going to reteach it again and kind of continue to improve upon that. So just some of those are some low-hanging fruit that we've really worked for this year to improve. But as we know, we're going to have to continue to shift. Now, one of the things that's going to throw a little bit of a monkey wrench into some of the scores, and when you adopt new curriculum, you do have the change aspect to it. We're expecting that, but when we see scores, my expectation is, if anything, our scores would stay the same before they, for that one adoption cycle, and then continue to go after that. But I think that's where we are at with this, and it's going to continue to build out along the way with more links. But I think, again, what I want to do is be transparent and put it out there for everyone to have. When you come to Riverside, this is what you expect. Like, this is what you're going to get in your classrooms. This is what we're going to do. These are the assessments we're going to give. And eventually on that assessment link, we'll also give about when we give them. Is it an early fall? The amounts of time per year, kind of that, so parents know. And they know why their kids are taking those assessments. And then the curriculum and the supports we have. If your student's struggling, this is what we do, and this is what we do even along the way first. Here's the step process along the way. So I think it's a really great kind of infographic and user-friendly and way to kind of get it out there for everyone.
Right. So obviously, let's say a particular elementary school, all elementaries might say when we're doing MAP testing, or I don't know if they tell parents that. Or
We do.
They do. But then, like, I know we have the 3rd grade fall reading test. So when is the spring testing?
It starts when we come back from,
Oh, so it's after break. Okay. And then,
the window opens the 24th, but that's when we're on spring break, so our particular 15 days of testing starts
Yeah.
after break, and we go all the way till the beginning of May, depending on the subject area.
okay. And then typically, we've been getting results at, like, what do they call it? Like initial results, but not totally scrubbed result or final results. So we know something before the end of the school year, right? Generally.
We get them, it's right around, because we end in well, we ended in May this year, it'll be right around the same time at the end of the school.
Yeah.
year. So we know early June
Yeah,
where they're at.
because I think by the time teachers leave, they have an idea of how their kids.
Some of them do.
Some do.
It just depends on when those, so the reading ones come back first, and so they'll have
Okay.
those. It's the math and, it's the other ones, so math,
Social
science, and social
studies,
studies, which
yeah.
come back a little bit later. We should have a pretty good idea, though. They always give a release date, and they're always on with it. I don't have that up.
Now that they're scored, you
But
know
now
what I
that they're
mean,
scored with
AI.
AI and all
Yeah.
that.
Then
Oh, yeah.
everything
That's-
comes back faster.
So
It
it
used to be
does.
like the third week of June, and it was always, there
Oh,
was
yeah,
always a
that's
little,
right.
you were always a little unsure if it was actually gonna come out, but now they're pretty spot on, and the turnaround time's fairly quick.
We know how the students who took the test did. When the scrubbing is more of a data reporting piece and how long the student has been in attendance, and deals more with not only value added, but what school gets credit for
Right.
a student. So if there was a student who attended, Painesville City for, April through March, but they came here after spring break, we would get that score because they took the test here, but
Right.
Painesville City, in the ultimate passage rate, Painesville City would get credit for it because they spent the majority of the year there. So those type of things get shuffled around with the state IDs, and that's what Elise does. So Elise, our EMS coordinator, spends her whole summer looking and bringing things in and out. And who didn't take a test? So like, another is US history. So the US history scores will come back, and they'll initially come back with a lot of students who didn't take the test.
Right.
But those, like 100 or so, but those 100 students are taking AP US history. So that AP score then gets loaded up, and those scores count back for our scores in terms of a PI, but not necessarily performance index and overall
Right.
general scores. And it's weighted, but it doesn't count, but it counts different for then the passage rate. Because the passage rate is simply how many students take it versus who didn't. But there's so much more that goes in, which is why we are using really PI
Right.
as that benchmark. And what's that performance index? 'Cause that takes in every single student. Now, obviously, passage rate's a good gauge of that, but it really is where are we moving the needle? And if the PI is raising, that means that we're touching every single student and moving all those scores up because it's about getting those advanced pluses and accelerators in that.
Okay. Sounds good.
So thoughts, feedback on this?
I think it's great. I mean, a lot of times I'm trying to, in my report, every time I say MTSS, I'm saying what it means.
Yeah, you have
Because
to,
it's
and I
alphabet
actually was
soup.
writing, like, we have to,
Yeah,
we
and
have
that's.
to make that more user-friendly
Yeah.
language, I think,
So
but
we
this
are.
is the first go-around that.
We're trying to make sure that it's familiarized to parents as well. So when we talk about some of these things, they can say, oh, hey, if I go here, this is kind of where we're going to, because this is
Yeah.
what I know. So
Right.
kind of a one-stop,
Right.
front and center on the website,
Mhm.
giving it its own little
Right.
space and page and not out there. So we're gonna work on the web
Okay.
design and all of that as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, now we're on to the things that you requested.
Okay, so the transition planning, I know things have not necessarily been communicated to staff about like transition, meaning what we're doing while construction is taking place before final placement of people or classes take place.
We are, I think as I mentioned this, I don't know who I've mentioned this to, but it is a concern. We are waiting on a finalized timeline from CCI to really get to where we are. The last I talked to our owner's rep, we will not have a GMP or a guaranteed maximum price until May, which means that they won't actually go out to bid and start putting anything in the ground until June. So that kind of
Well,
gives us.
the documents will be ready.
The documents,
April.
the documents have not been completed for either CTE, which has no real impact on staff here other than having the classrooms open. But Riverview will not be even, the documents need another month from what we've understood from the construction documents. So we don't even have a GMP till May. That means they start to break ground in June. They do need to get into the building. And we've been told by CCI that the work in the building to do a little bit of the renovation in the building will be done before the start of school, so that's not a concern. But then we're really looking again to that I'm waiting to kind of have that finalized documents, and we're going out to bid to kind of say this is what we're moving for, to make sure that nothing has come up where when they do one of the final parts is they look at the documents, they put them all together, and you have a meeting that looks at, okay, we've got a gas line going through here, but that's a bathroom, that's not a, so, and that's just, so having that tie-up all together to make sure, which could cause additional delays or speed things up. So we have some ideas, and we've told staff, and kind of had some, we're gonna move some things around, but until we see that finalized timeline to come out and say, this is exactly what we're doing, is really a, I think we're a bit premature. Like I've said all along, we have a number of plans in place as to what to do. None of them involve putting up permanent walls anywhere. None of them involve, a lot of them are temporary moves until the new classrooms are open. As soon as those new classrooms are open, we're gonna move people there. The one thing we are very, very adamant about is our unit classrooms. If we move them, those moves need to be at the beginning of the year. The only reason why we would not move them is if something were to come up soon in those document reviews and all that puts, oh wait, there's a huge delay that's happening, and that building's not gonna be open until, say, March or April. At that point, it doesn't make sense to move a unit, into a room and then have a room for 2 months. So those are some things that really having those conversations, but we're really being prudent about what that is and waiting, and it changes kind of, every week we have these update meetings. But we just had we just were on the phone with Roger to kind of come up with what's our next step and timeline in all of this, and that's really where his site work's going to begin at Riverview and at the campus here, really in June. That's the expectation as long as we're still on.
So is that considered what they call early release?
So early release, the documents have to be done for early release, and the
Okay.
documents aren't, so there are no, in order for them to do early release, they have to have the documents done and to send out, and there are no documents done for anything to a finalized state. So they can't do early release and then come back. You still have to have that guaranteed maximum price. Because that's the other problem to it is, if this with everything else going on, if this guaranteed maximum price comes back, $1 million over budget, now you go back and value engineer, that's some more time into it. So part of that could be really, which could then cause delay. Because if you're going back to work and do all that to get your price down, that now you've got delays in the project as well. So I think now, I've talked to other people in the construction industry, they're not necessarily as concerned about some of this, like tariffs and all that, and the commodities that are there, but they think, especially with what we're building in, but you never know until you know. And I think that's a part of what we're really waiting on. And it's frustrating for a lot of people, including everyone in this room, because we want to have those timelines, and we want to make sure we communicate everything as fast as we can. But we do need to make sure that we're prudent in it and that everything comes back within budget and all that. We've got some preliminary ideas.
Right, well, the fact that these are, in the construction world, considered smaller projects, not whole
Yes.
builds from scratch, puts you in a better position.
It does.
Because you're not going to need the quantity of material.
Absolutely
So-
does.
And, when you're adding new, like a smaller addition like CTE, that, run into things unless you have a gas line or something.
Yeah, I was just
or
gonna say,
a car barrier underneath.
like a giant
Yeah.
gas line running right through
But-
where we want to put the addition.
But as far as adding on to Riverview, which is a newer building, that's probably gonna be less complicated, a lot less complicated than, Buckeye, that's an older building, and even punching through a wall in the existing building for team teaching, you have to worry about what's in there.
I would agree with all of that, and I think that's all of those things are concerns. I do think, and I think when you work through and working with an older building and tying systems together, and even in Riverview, there's some concerns about tying the systems together and all that, but not nearly what they are with Buckeye, and the comprehensive document package that has to get put together for Buckeye and building out of Buckeye is going to take significantly longer, and I know that work has not started, to my understanding. There's been some sketches, but the actual true, because we haven't necessarily come up with a formalized design yet to move forward. So I think that's the biggest thing. I know that's still in the committee phase and design phase.
So I just want to make sure I'm clear. So CTE, we have no timeline.
We are all, so the expectation is still the timeline that we have heard from, the preliminary timeline from both RCI, which is our owner's rep, as well as Cleveland Construction, is both will be complete by the end of the calendar year. So do not,
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure. So CTE right now says by
CTE is
the
a
end of the
little
year.
ahead of Riverview, but they're kind of running neck and neck. Both should be done, ready for occupancy by January of 2026, right?
And the same with Riverview then.
That's where I say CTE is, I am gonna lay down in the parking lot and let the buses run me over if we're not to that point. But yes, Gary, would you, and I guess I would say even with pushing back the documents and we're not going out to bid probably till May, they're still saying, because I have not heard, we didn't have an update this week because we didn't really have a reason to get together. You're still hearing, they're saying January 2026?
Mhm.
You guys, okay, all right, so,
But the timeline can change. I just want to, it's a preliminary timeline.
The timeline can't change. Occupancy is scheduled for the 26th. Obviously, there's a punch list after that.
Okay. And then Buckeye, no timeline.
Buckeye, the timeline of, the last timeline I heard for Buckeye is at the earliest breaking ground will be October to do some site work, but then building over the winter is a challenge, depending if we have a winter like we had this year. But that's the last I heard. I did ask Roger to come to the, they will be at the board meeting Thursday.
Okay.
And I asked him to kind of provide a timeline and answer those questions that you might have, again, per an update.
And we have no guaranteed maximum prices on anything.
We
Everything's
do
still
not,
a,
we do not have full drawings on it, and we have estimates from both Cleveland Construction on CTE and on Riverview. We do not have an estimate on Buckeye. We had initial estimates on 12 classrooms in the gym in 3 different renderings, but we don't have estimates on the new design or any of that for square footage.
And within committee, we're working on, the need for what I call support services. The list is amazing because even when I toured Riverview, just how the pods are being used for, in some of the smaller rooms for title, reading and math, for speech, PT, OT, ESL. I mean, I don't know what do you call it? It's not ESL. What is it?
ELL.
ELL now. ELL. Keeps
the-
changing.
They changed it every
Yeah.
year.
EL.
It's EL now.
EL, not EL. They dropped an L,
just
EL.
wanted to condense
Because I
that.
saw an EL room at
Yeah.
Buckeye.
Yes.
Okay, but, obviously, those are not full classrooms when you're
They all-
doing a new build.
They're all
and-
square footage.
And how do you, incorporate that without increasing?
So one of
The
the,
footprint.
one of the things that the Riverview edition that's really a nice, I think is a real bonus to it is we have when the classrooms are there, there's some small group classrooms on the second floor. On the first floor, there's another office, there's an ancillary office kind of tucked in there. There's a little bit of storage tucked in there as well. When you do that kind of design concept off of that and tuck some of that in, those are key spaces that, are really nice to have in a building and are things that are truly needed. Buckeye is great, that building itself is infamous for, if they've got a scrap of land, they will put kids in it and teach them. That's what they do. So really in looking at how we make that and expand those spaces so that some of those storage spaces that are not used for classrooms go back to storage spaces. What that looks like, where we can design other places to make sure that we have ample space for that school, which is really packed in there.
Yeah, and part of it is, just the short conversation I had with Ryan is, do you want to spend $500 a square foot to build a storage space in a new addition, or do you want to, when you renovate at, let's say, $250 a square foot, or half the price, that you're accounting for storage?
I would
Yeah.
prefer to spend $500 a square foot to put students in a section where they can actually have a window, get some natural
Yeah,
light. all
and be
that.
right-sized, yeah.
And take them the closet that they were in and turn that back into a storage space.
Yeah, I agree. So,
So that's
I
a,
agree with
and
that.
I
So
think those
he's-
were great
he's
things that
looking at
came
that.
up out of the, I know I couldn't make the last committee meeting, but I think those are great things that came out of that. And I think, I've even asked Mrs. Smolin to look at, what really and truly are some of the issues. The other thing about reviewing the pods and all that, those collaborative spaces are becoming used more and more, and as we start to personalize learning in different ways and what that looks like, do we have opportunities for those to look at Buckeye, and how can we use that kind of spaces for collaborative spaces and all that? I think that's a thing that, Mrs. Small and I have had conversations about in terms of how she views her staff kind of working together in those curricular areas, and what that could look like
Yeah.
with an addition, in an ideal world.
right. Well, and the situation, like, in other words, the initial drawing, where we did have doors between, let's say, two classrooms.
Yep.
But in the conversation, and part of it was an email received about, the music teacher, could they have access to the gym where the stage is? But the fact is that, if Buckeye doesn't have music and gym the same day, the answer is yes. And shouldn't that room be closer to the gym? So we, where we had two doors between two classrooms, that moved to another space so that art and music could share a room, but music could use the stage.
It
But
would be
still have
interesting, I don't
storage.
think I was in that conversation.
You weren't.
So,
These were the nitty-gritty little things we
and
were
that's
talking
fine,
about.
and that's a great conversation, except we have two buildings that have a stage, and I would be curious how often the music teachers, who are the music teachers who are in those buildings, use the stage.
Yeah.
I don't know if changing the design to fit the
Right.
once or twice per year, they need to go down and use the stage is enough. I don't know.
Well, and
But we have
yeah.
data to show
Right.
how often they actually do that kind
Right.
of stuff. And
And
I
like
don't know that
Brian
it's
said,
very
it's
often.
2-3 times a year you might be having a program.
Right.
And there's these, and keep this in mind, there's these new profile chairs that easily roll down. You don't have to store them in the new addition and waste $500 a square foot space for them. But the fact is, it's easier to set up, easier to transport. Those are the kind of things, it's part of the conversation. But the difference with Riverview and Parkside is that their gym, they have a row of little bleachers, but their stage is in the cafeteria, so they're still sharing that space, whereas that's not gonna happen at Buckeye because their existing lunchroom is not where the stage is gonna be. But they
Again, I
also
would be curious
have,
how often they use it.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
programming wise, that's something we should talk about.
Yeah.
Because my opinion would be that team teaching, that's going to happen all day, every day, is a better use of space and creating a connection between classrooms than putting an art music classroom that 3 times per year wants to go down to use the stage.
right.
So we probably should continue to explore
Well, and
that
it
a
was
little
an
bit.
uneven number of classrooms. There was kindergarten, on the right side, there was kindergarten, then 3 classrooms, so 2 could be joined. Then there was that other one. But on the other side, there were 2 kindergarten and 2 regular ed, where there would be a door. So it made sense that here we have this room that's not connected. So,
Yeah,
just
just
a thought.
not being in on that meeting.
Yeah, well, we're gonna review it.
Okay,
All right, and then, basically, with this transition plan, obviously, it's a work in progress, but, I'm one of these people that needs to see the space, and it had been a while since I had seen the pod and how they're being used. Everybody's using them a little different, because originally I saw them at Parkside, but Riverview is really maximizing that space out. And, how 3 of the rooms kind of are on one side where you might have a temporary wall or partition.
More of a like a cubicle type.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but then it allows a classroom to be in there comfortably, and then there would be one classroom, so that, what they call the ingress, egress, whatever, that it would flow, that you're not gonna create a situation where the fire department is saying, you can't block this off, you know, I just needed to see that. And so that works well. The challenge, obviously, for anyone using that space now is where do they go? So it's musical chairs. That's what I've decided. It is musical chairs. And so, you know, if you're looking, you know, at where preschool is in the transition plan and where it is after Riverview is built, everybody is waiting. It's, yeah. And so, and I understand the transition, and I'm fine with that as long as we had space. And this kind of led into the discussion about class size, because currently we have a fifth section of kindergarten. We don't have a fifth section of first, but I think we need to do that. given the space.
That actually, talking to Mrs. Chantry, that class size went down. I'm waiting to see what the numbers are. But those numbers went down. We had some students who have left.
Yeah, because
So-
I went into the current thing, and, yeah, right now they're 103, 25, 26. But,
They've lost some students,
yeah,
according to her, where she said she doesn't know. She said she doesn't want to, never wants to kind of say, hey, we need to have this, but she's like, it's one of those that's on the borderline where we want to watch. I think a lot of those we'll do a watch, like we'll tag them to watch them along the right and fill that with a long term for a year, because we're not exactly sure because of the fluctuating numbers.
well,
But
and
she
we
said
added
that.
that intervention person
We
to
did.
help with that class size. But the other concern is, which you brought up, are sometimes the behaviors, you know, and so that's something that, you know, with more students and the younger they are, it's hard to have those big numbers. But right now,
I have to excuse myself, I'm sorry, because of my job, so.
okay, that's okay. Thank you for attending. All right, so third grade, yeah, is at 115, same number as the current fifth grade that has 5 sections. Fifth grade's graduating, they won't be using that music room, so somebody's going to be in there. But the question is, you know, you got to think of the little guys, if they're brand new kindergartners, you know, where they were using a space, you're going to use a space with program transfer possibly. So, so you don't have, you know, an issue with transition mid-year. So the question is, what will happen with, if we get, depending on kindergarten enrollment, if we end up with 5 sections again?
I feel like this is, we don't know. And-
We don't.
And we probably, I mean, to keep, I feel like, it's March. We can't even start to
No, we
have
can't.
those conversations.
We haven't even
It's-
opened up kindergarten.
Yeah, it's coming.
enrollment yet.
But all I'm saying is this is all part of the considerations, and I had to see it holistically. If we're moving programming over, that we're making sure we have, you know, space for the Riverview students who are already there. That's my concern, and that we're not overcrowding classes. And, you know, like if, you know, you've got 115, you know, 4 sections puts it at 28. There isn't a 28 on this page. So,
and bubbles
across the
happen.
board.
Yeah, and we were looking, Chuck and I actually were looking historically prior to consolidating. At one point, Leroy had 27, 28 in the history. It's not optimal, but to me, but we do this all the time. We keep an eye on that. This is what we do. You know, we just, and so I appreciate what you're saying, you know, when you wanted to see it and how things are gonna move and how does the pod look kind of thing. But this is what we do every spring. We
Yeah,
look at
and I
those
know that.
numbers
I
and-
saw his board. I know
Yeah.
Mallory has a board in her
Yeah.
office watching. But, you know, it's not something where I would want to reduce that to 4 sections if it's at 28. 4 sections of 28.
Are you
That's
speaking the third grade?
the current third grade.
No, I think those are, yeah, those are things we absolutely look at, and we take a really close look, but again, you know, I'm a planner too, I appreciate the planning, especially as we start to look for, you know, teachers and all of that. When we look at where those are, I think we would kind of keep that consistently, that's a that's a person who, that's a section that we typically write that bubble up to what that looks like and to where those are. But I
Yeah.
think, I would say the other one that kind of comes out is when we start to talk to students, especially at the end of the year, we get a lot of families who move and they buy houses and they move out of the district and they move to different places. We get those more at the end of the year too, and those all factor into all the decisions that we.
Yeah, because you're gonna have withdrawals, you're gonna have, most people wanna move in the summer and they need to register in another district. And
Yep.
so those numbers are gonna fluctuate, I
They
get it.
do.
The other one that, I know you had an eye on was the numbers at second grade at Buckeye.
Yeah,
Right now they're at 49, so you're saying 25, 25. And, even when I look at Parkside, they have, numbers in that range, 24, 25. And so are you looking at, you're gonna continue to watch that, but what it does is, if you keep it 3 with that low number, then it impacts how we're going to house everybody without
We
having.
know.
you know, no, we absolutely,
That's our
we do,
conversation.
we have, that is a daily conversation.
Okay.
So it is not, so
Okay.
these are things that we always err on the side of probably what's most, we want to do what's best for kids, but also what's best for our taxpayers. And if we can eliminate a section through attrition or through whatever, we're gonna do that.
Yeah.
And so what that looks like happens to be potentially moving a section. Now, in second grade at Buckeye, we told the teacher last year, there's a potential you're moving, pack your stuff. Then we had a couple kids move in, the section went up a little bit, so we said, let's go back to 3.
I remember that.
That's that borderline one. We're gonna watch that one.
Yeah.
Next year, that will most likely be 2. But to come out and say that right now
No, you can't.
without having the conversation with a direct staff member who's impacted, to say we're gonna go to 2, because it's a person too, and it's a personal thing. So to come out and say this is what's gonna happen, and you're moving to here, where we have to we want to find a place where we're going to move that person, and if we move that person, it will displace somebody else or a long term or something like that. So it's really about doing that and doing that in the right way,
Right.
and making sure we treat people first over the process and treat them so that's a big thing that what we do is when we make these decisions to kind of go forward with, we'll let those people know first, and we let them know in the most respectful way we can. And then we go to what it looks like from the future as to where we shift people around. I think we have those who are teaching into the classes that are not the section that they're building control for, or when they know it. Yeah, people know. I mean, they're not. It's where am I going and for how long?
Yeah.
And they just want to know. And I would say we're a bit premature to really look at what all of that looks like. We know. We know for a good part as to where those classes will be. Like I said, we have, I think, not even out to 5 plans to what could happen and where people can go. But it is a big, there are some shifts that are going to happen. We're still getting, we're getting more and more, retirements for people who are kind of.
No, that's what I was gonna say, retirements.
Well, we're
whether-
looking at,
Yeah, because you're, again, going back to the transition plan, and then what does it look like when the builds are done?
Yeah.
Then, who's retiring, how this shifts, and I'm not familiar with how it works. Is it by grade level? Let's say it's a particular grade level that's reducing, then is that, is it looked at holistically? Because you have long-term subs, you have openings across the district. I'm sure people can say, hey, I want to move to
They
this school.
can, it doesn't
They
mean
can.
that we will. but-
Yeah, I know, they can.
Yeah, they can ask.
So you
I
don't know those things.
Yep.
One reminder was when they did the 5th grade with Buckeye and Melridge going over to Lamouth, there was a teacher who had 1 more year,
And she
wanted to
decided,
stay,
yep.
somebody else went,
Yeah.
so,
we did, I would say that one went about as smooth as it
Yeah,
can. And
I
what
thought it was
happened-
great.
And what happened was that, I know I was over there, I think, somebody else may have joined me over there. We met with all 5 teachers, we told them, before we told anybody else, this is what we're doing. We said, you have the option to think about it, whether you want to go or not. At that point then, with it, we said, we can move you, but if you would like to stay, we can find others to want to move. We had a teacher who went to go get said, I'm in, went actually to go get some coursework to get licensed to do it, because he
Yeah.
didn't necessarily have the licensure. So burned the midnight oil, got his coursework, and he is there and killing it.
Yeah,
For lack
that's
of, I mean, so it's really been, that was a good thing. In situations like this, we you know, Mrs. Ada puts out a staffing survey, so we see who wants to move.
yeah.
If we have people who
Right.
want to move, we take a look at that first, and we approach them and say, hey, what do you think about this? You know, we have some who absolutely don't want to move.
Right,
And then we work with the principals as well as, ultimately, if we have to move somebody, it comes down to grade level and higher date
yeah.
as to who we're forcing.
By
But
grade level?
by grade level.
Okay, because that's different than what I
Yeah.
was
No, it's
familiar
grade level and
with.
higher date.
So
It's
by
so good.
grade level, okay. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but,
And we work closely with RLEA too, as we start to do it.
and the other thing is, you know, again, a lot of people are going to move because of transition, but that doesn't mean where they're gonna end up. So, yeah,
They
There
won't move,
could be
they
some
won't move
changes.
what they're teaching necessarily, they may
Not
be moving
mid-year.
rooms.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
may
but-
change geography. They-
Yes, they may
Yeah.
change geography, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily the class they're teaching. Where, yeah, the where they're teaching
Mhm.
may change, but certainly not, you know,
Right.
if you teach first grade, you're not gonna change
Mhm.
first grade in the middle of the year. Where you teach first grade
Yeah.
might change in this whole transition thing. So is that class size, and then was there something you wanted to talk about with room usage and team teaching?
Yes, yeah, when I was over at Melridge, I mean, there are some teachers who team teach, some, we used to sometimes call departmentalized, but the kids go back and forth with different
In
things.
third grade,
Yeah.
third, fourth, and fifth grade.
Yeah,
they're
and
departmentalized.
they're just walking across the hall to their other room, whatever, there isn't a door between because of the existing, it's an older building. We're kind of in between now, because we have an older building at Buckeye, where you know, eventually, within, you know, another year, we'll probably be renovating the following summer, not this summer, but the following summer, where you can create those spaces, and plus building new spaces that allow for that. But I guess my concern is that I feel very strongly, and when I walked into Melridge's library, I mean, it was so inviting. I know Parkside and Riverview have a really nice library. I do not want the library made in 2 classrooms at Buckeye. I
Okay.
feel very
That'll
strongly
be a
about that.
conversation with Chris, because
Okay.
we need
That's
that
what I need
space,
to
and,
know.
and Cassie said, I believe Cassie's opinion on how her building is used is that it only gets used once a day.
Yeah.
We wouldn't take that away, and it's all temporary.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have to go through, you know, to
Right.
get to the other side. So if temporarily, we need to relocate the library so we have instructional space, I mean, those are
Wow.
some of the decisions that we have to make. If it's only for a year and it's 1 day a week, I'm not sure that outweighs the fact that we need classroom space to bring everybody in from the trailers.
Okay, but Rich is checking out the
He
2
is.
4th grade rooms with the in-between, because if that doesn't work, then there's gonna be an issue with the rest of the renovation, or how does it work? To me, it's a test balloon. How is that going to work if, on the existing space,
I think he's
that we
looking
renovate?
specifically into, you put a hole in the door, in a block wall, you put a hole in there and put a door in, that's not an issue. He's looking into really asbestos and abatement,
Pipes.
what we do for that, the pipes that are going through, looking, you know, the rooms that they pick, are they picking, you know, is electric in there, like all of those sorts of things. So he's taking a look at that. We've put holes in block walls, or
Mhm.
before we did it at Lamouth. So he's looking at those specifically and getting a price from CCI and what that would look like to do it. So I know he's actively on it and seeing, and can it be, you know, what's the timeline and what's the implications of all of that? You know, if it needs to be abated, what is that? Getting some costs, estimates and all that for it.
Right. Well, you know, that room is used, a library is used for the tech person, There are meetings in there, there's book fair in there. Right now, I understand that the psych is going to be using that room more full-time, like.
They have a separate office.
They have the set, but it goes through that,
Mhm.
that space, and kids go through there too. Classroom teachers do go down there when they're not scheduled to go down there. I have polled as many kids as I could just to ask about the library, would you want it in a classroom? They love their library the way it is.
And I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
I think the issue here is, it's 1 year. I'm not saying let's take the library away for the rest of your lives. I don't want to do that. In fact, I make the argument at an elementary level, we still need a library. We maybe don't need it so much at a high school anymore, what a traditional library
Well, yeah,
looks
I know
like.
the media
You know what I
thing.
mean? But but a library is needed. But we're talking about having to bring classrooms into a building with limited space. Something has to give.
Right, but we had it all mapped out that it all fit. It all fit without the use of the library. And so I don't
And
understand.
is that with the intervention stuff? And I don't
Yeah,
know. Like, I don't.
she said she's got that worked out.
That they'll stay like in the
Because we
ends
still
and
have
small
those
areas in the
wings,
closets and
yeah.
stuff where they are.
Yeah,
And on the
and we
stage.
walk through there and all that.
All of that is assuming, when I go back to the whole master timeline, all of that is assuming a completed date at Riverview of December of this year. Because that we're shifting a lot of different classrooms out to other places as well, and we're putting a crunch on Riverview for those students. So if we had to keep a unit at Buckeye, or the current unit at Buckeye, that then takes up a room, which then again, we would be short a room. So
Yeah, but there's space at Riverview to do, what you want to do with 2 classrooms.
We're just very tight,
Well, I mean, that's why I took the time to go over there and look and see, and it works. It works.
So,
And what works for Melridge is, yes, they have 2 preschools and, adding 2 more, as a transition plan, you're already
Well, so the
registered with
classroom
the
has to
state.
move out of Melridge then.
Pardon me?
A classroom would have to move out of Melridge
and into Riverview.
and into Riverview.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's 2
So
classrooms that have to
Right.
move
And
into
there's
Riverview.
that space, there's the upstairs speech, or special ed room, and there's the one that's being
Correct.
used by current
But if,
kindergarten.
but if the Riverview date comes back with something, the number comes back ridiculously high, and we do a lot of value engineering and change some things, and it delays the project, is it really worth it to move all of these with a March opening date? That's the question we have to weigh out
Yeah.
once that
I
comes through.
I think that I don't know, I mean, I feel very strongly that after this year, I want the trailers gone, and that we're gonna do what we need to do to house students in buildings of brick and mortar.
We have had that plan, we agree with that. I think it's how do we use those modular units until we absolutely can't have them anymore? And can we use them for other things like offices, ancillary services, so that everyone's not on top of each other?
Yeah, but
That's-
even if you're breaking ground physically in October, if that's the date, but I've heard different things about doing some prep work in the summer. But the fact is, those have to be gone. And it has to be fenced, and you can't have kids running around while you're having big equipment, and then the weather starts to be a challenge.
And I don't think
as
anyone
you
said
get
anything
into the
about
fall.
kids
Yeah.
in those
So,
situations. So,
All right, well, let me see if there was anything else. Let's see. All right. Yeah, and I don't want to talk specifics because it's in process. I don't want
Everything is in
people going
process.
crazy. I know how that goes. The rumor mill is already there.
Yeah, it's already there. So
We are
whether we
trying
talk
as
about
hard
it or
as
not
we can
yet.
to treat our people correctly and make sure that they know first, and to make sure that we have an absolute plan.
Right.
Because that's-
Now, I know that there was a shed built at Melridge also for storage. But I guess, I don't know if sheds can be moved, but
Can't-
they did put it in the front there where they have the drop-off for the preschool, which is a great drop-off area. But then you have to go out that door, then come through the doors, and go out the back door to the, it's not, like, eventually, it probably needs to go to the playground side. I'm just saying.
Well, one of them might need to go to Riverview as well.
What's that?
One of them might need to go to Riverview because the preschool, the shed is for preschool equipment. So we
Okay.
may want to put one at Riverview and move the new one.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is, you know, I don't know what kind of timing there is for a primary playground there, because we talked about preschool, kindergarten first, using that and uncrowding the current.
The last year, we talked about specifically a preschool playground, which has specific requirements that are different than
Yeah,
the
fenced in.
others. We have not had a timing, and I think that is going to be more of a cost issue as to
Okay.
what that is. I know that that comes with a cost to it.
Well, I don't see that happening until the following summer, you know what I'm saying? So it'll be a different fiscal year. You happy?
I don't know that it matters at this point.
Given the recent
Based,
fiscal,
yeah, forecast, I'm not
forecast,
sure
I
that
think,
that
yeah,
matters,
that's- This year might be better than next year.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah.
But then that changes the forecast as well, so.
Right. And the other thing about preschool playgrounds, I mean, because I worked with one, well, actually two, one at Fairport, one at Perry. Yeah, besides the fencing in and everything, you can get some funding, like sometimes there's funding for that kind of thing. Or somebody might be willing to have it named, or, you know what I'm saying, donate. And so there are other avenues for that,
The
because
Brewster
it's,
Playground sounds fantastic.
the what?
The Brewster Playground sounds fantastic.
There we go.
Well, I definitely would want to.
I can cut you a deal.
Yeah.
An educational,
Yes.
like, in other words, a community more thing. But I would contribute if there was a
Yeah.
fund. Okay, so let me see, what else was on there, room usage, team
That's it.
teaching. So the team teaching, like, no one ever considers, because this was a benefit at one school I was at in South Utica Lyndhurst, where kids were coming to school, and it really benefited to have like multi-age, where there was K1, they were with the same set of teachers 2 years, and it just made a tremendous difference in behaviors, academic achievement, all that stuff. You didn't have that whole learning curve of starting all over again. But I know you're into team teaching, and that's fine, but I don't know if that's ever been a discussion.
I don't think we're there yet, absolutely, the two of us have talked about that.
I've seen it work.
Yeah, and I think you
There's-
got both of us
yeah,
on board.
There's a lot of value to looping. We loop a lot of our special ed students with some of that. I think I would, as a staff, we're not there yet.
Yeah, and I get it, I
But
get it.
definitely
I
on
just
the
wondered what
horizon,
the
yeah.
conversations
Yeah.
were.
And some of our.
So you just call it looping?
Yes.
And keeping it that way, okay. But then that requires a teacher to be really, I mean, that's kind of what we did with the gifted program. If it was third, fourth, you're with those kids 2 years, you had to know
You
both
had to know
curriculums.
the content,
Yeah,
yeah, and
it
that
was
gets
a
a
lot.
little bit, and it is a little bit more difficult now with the requirements and the standards at each grade level. Do you know what I mean? Just in
Yeah.
how education has evolved, it's not
Right.
quite as easy anymore. But
Okay.
a multi-age classroom would be, you know what I mean, where you
Yeah.
would, team teaching would be really cool.
Yeah, well, and yeah, the people that, a lot of it is who's doing it
Yep,
too.
absolutely.
Yeah, all right, so I just wanted to review our, unless there's anything else, our next meeting, I'm trying to see where it is, 7:30, April 15th.
If you say so.
Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, that one, yes, I don't see any reason to change that. So we're good.
All
I
right,
mean, we scheduled these a while out, so.
Yeah, they're.
okay, I just wanted to
Yeah.
review that that was still okay, because we changed this.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all righty.
All right,
And then, thank you,
all
everybody.
set? All right, I'm gonna go
And
to
then
the
do you
bathroom and
have
get a